When we think of viruses, we used to think of the flu. The flu virus was that pesky thing that would change so often that we had to get that flu shot every year. When you hit 60 and have one foot in the grave, it became the constant theme of your doctor. Then came COVID. The first time I was even aware that something was going on was on a trip to the doctor's office in December 2019. On that visit, I had to fill out a form. The only thing I vaguely remember about it was it asking about travel to China. Little did I know it would turn into an odyssey that continues to this day. But what exactly is a virus? I decided to do a deep dive into this subject so that you don't have to. Viruses are a collection of different kinds of molecules that consist of genetic material, either single or double-stranded DNA or RNA with a protein coat and sometimes a layer of fat. Viruses that are enveloped with a layer of fat, such as the coronavirus, can be killed by hand washing since soap disrupts the fatty layer on the virus. Viruses are quite small and can only replicate within host cells. That means they can't reproduce on their own like, say, a bacterium or a human. They don't have ribosomes. You remember what ribosomes are, right? From high school biology? Sure you do. Oh, you don't. Well, anyway, ribosomes are cellular organelles that manufacture protein. Viruses can't carry out metabolic processes, so they can't manufacture protein. So are viruses even alive? According to the strict definition of life, viruses are non-living. They can't reproduce on their own. They need a living host. They can't carry out metabolic processes, generate ATP. They can't independently form proteins since they don't possess ribosomes. Viruses are what is known as an obligate intracellular parasite, an organism that can't grow outside of a living cell. Viruses evolve over time, which is why we need to get a flu vaccine every year. They cause diseases including flu, herpes simplex, Ebola, and the common cold. Not all viruses infect humans. Some only infect plants, and some only infect animals. Some viruses can evolve and jump from animals to humans, such as the bird flu and swine flu, as well as SARS-CoV-2, commonly known as the coronavirus, which probably came from bats. Here are some examples of some viruses. The human immunodeficiency virus, commonly known as HIV, is a virus that attacks cells that help the body fight infection. In other words, the immune system. It spreads by sexual contact and there is no cure. However, modern antivirals reduce the amount of HIV in the body so that the patient can stay healthy. Left untreated, HIV can progress to AIDS or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. The disease kills the CD4 cells or T cells in the immune system, and the person is no longer able to fight off infection. Hepatitis B is a liver infection which is preventable by vaccination. The virus is passed from person to person when body fluids infected with the virus pass to a non-infected person. It can be either acute, lasting less than 6 months, or chronic. If it becomes chronic, it can lead to cirrhosis of the liver or liver cancer. Ebola, also known as Ebola hemorrhagic fever, causes fever, headache, and muscle pain, vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. As it progresses, the person may experience internal bleeding and coughing up blood. The bleeding is caused with the virus interfering with blood clotting. Ebola is a rare disease, but the fatality rate is high, around 50%. The virus is shaped like a cylinder and have glycoproteins on its surface. This disease also occurs in non-human primates. The adenovirus is a common respiratory virus which causes mild cold or flu-like symptoms. It looks sort of like a tent with push pins and is very contagious, but most infections are not severe. The virus causes a wide range of illnesses such as the common cold, fever, sore throat, acute bronchitis, pneumonia, pink eye, and acute gastroenteritis. Using a bleach-based disinfectant on surfaces generally kills the virus. Influenza, commonly known as the flu, is one of the most common viruses. It attacks the lungs, nose, and throat and spreads by airborne respiratory droplets, touching contaminated surfaces, and saliva. The symptoms are muscle aches, fever, chills, cough, and congestion. It's usually self-treatable, but can be deadly in older people and those with chronic disease. That's why it's important for us old folks to get a flu shot. Better to have an arm that feels like you've been punched 1,000,000 times and possibly a low-grade illness than be hospitalized or dead. At least that's my view. Since the flu virus mutates constantly, after all, that's what they do, every year you have to get another flu shot. Researchers have to constantly keep up with a mutating flu virus, and every year the shot you get has varying effectiveness, depending on the strain. Research has shown that today's flu is a descendant of the 1918 Spanish flu. Rabies is a deadly virus that spreads by the bite of infected animals. It causes inflammation of the brain and the spinal cord. The symptoms are weakness, discomfort, fever, and headache. It then progresses to cerebral dysfunction, confusion, and anxiety. Since there's no effective treatment once the symptoms have appeared, if a person thinks that they may have contracted it from an animal bite and the animal can't be found, then a series of shots are given near the area of the bite. The bacteriophage might look like a brain eater or a head scratcher, but it's a type of virus that kills bacteria. The word itself means bacteria eater. The virus attaches itself to a bacterium and infects the host cell. The virus then forces the bacterium to produce its own viral components. Even though the virus itself is harmless, as the bacteriophage infects a new bacterium, it causes the bacterium to release a toxin that is harmful to humans. So the bacteriophage, or the bacteria that is infecting you, aren't harmful by themselves. It's the toxin that's released by the bacterium because the bacteriophage is infecting it. Cholera is an example of this. Even though cholera is caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae, it won't cause you to get cholera unless the bacterium is infected with a bacteriophage carrying the disease for the cholera toxin. Diphtheria is another disease that is caused in this way. It's not the bacterium or virus that causes the disease, but the toxin that is released by the bacteria being infected by the bacteriophage that is the issue. The human papillomavirus, or HPV, is an infection that causes warts in various parts of the body. This is the most common STI in the United States. Unfortunately, this is a chronic condition and can't be cured, although treatment can help. Some types, such as the virus that causes cervical cancer, are preventable by vaccine. Rotavirus is a very contagious disease that causes diarrhea, lasting for 3 to 7 days. Before the development of a vaccine, most children had been infected with the virus before the age of 5. The resulting dehydration can be life-threatening for a young child, so keeping the child hydrated is important. There are 2 types of herpes viruses. Herpes type 1, or oral herpes, causes fever blisters or cold sores. Herpes type 1 is transmitted through oral secretions or sores on the skin. It can be spread by sharing toothbrushes and eating utensils. Type 2, or genital herpes, causes sores in the genital area most of the time, although they can appear elsewhere. Type 2 herpes is transmitted by sexual contact. There's no cure, but there are antivirals that can relieve the symptoms and shorten outbreaks. The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, was identified in 2019 and is known as SARS-CoV-2. The 19 is the year of its identification. SARS stands for Severe Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus Number 2. It's called coronavirus because the virus outer layer consists of spike proteins that surround it like a crown. Sometimes COVID is called the novel coronavirus. Novel comes from the Latin word novus, which means new. This refers to a virus or bacterial strain not previously seen in humans. Symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. Symptoms may include fever or chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, loss of taste or smell, sore throat, nausea, or vomiting. Seek emergency help if you have any of the following symptoms: trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, confusion, or inability to stay awake. I hope you got something out of this video on viruses, and maybe it will go viral. Did you see what I did there? Even though I only listed examples of a few viruses, there are a ton of viruses out there. How many? Well, a lot. It's estimated that there are 10 nonillion viruses, that's 10 to the 23rd power, that exist on Earth. It's pretty amazing that we are not walking around chronically ill. Why is that? Well, only a very small number of viruses pose a threat to us. So don't lose sleep over the gazillion viruses that are buzzing around out there. So before you go back to sleep to make up for the sleep you lost worrying about the gazillion viruses, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to keep this old lady going.